Shanghai GDG is a very interesting developer community.
I'm glad somebody has asked this question.
This is where the magic happens.
This is primarily a question and answer show. So if any of you out there would like to ask questions.
Hi everyone. Welcome to this week's session of the Google Plus Platform Office Hours. This week we're going to field your questions and comments about the Hangouts API. So before we dig into the questions and answers, let me introduce myself and my co-hosts and my other guests. So starting with me, I'm Jenny Murphy. I'm a developer programs engineer here at Google, which means I help you build really cool stuff with Google Plus APIs. And joining me, other Googlers joining me via the magic of cyberspace, we have Jonathan Berry on the Hangout.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Berry. I'm a developer advocate focusing on Hangouts and Hangout apps.
We also have Silvano.
Hi, I'm Silvano Luciani, and I'm a developer programs engineer working in London, focusing on Hangouts API and apps.
Yep. We also have some developers who have joined us through the same Hangout. So from left to right, Abraham.
Hi, I'm Abraham Williams. I have a startup in San Francisco called Advocate. I'm constantly hacking on different various projects, and I've been having fun watching all the Mars news in the last couple of days.
And Alan.
Hi there, I'm Alan Furstenberg. I'm an independent developer in New York. I tend to work a lot with the Hangout API, and I started dabbling with the History API a little bit.
Next is Emily.
I'm a software engineer at Google, and I've only recently started there, so I've actually had a lot of experience externally poking at the APIs.
Yeah, that's the nature of a lot of our favorite developers end up deciding to join us.
It's a good place.
Yeah, not bad. And Gerwin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gerwin from Austria. I'm developing all sorts of stuff with the different Google Plus APIs.
Great. And last but not least, Matt, who got an invite about 10 minutes ago.
Hey guys, I'm Matt. I work here at Curious Minds. I'm just really kind of playing around with the Google Hangouts API and seeing what we can do with it.
That's great. So I guess without further ado, actually, Jonathan, did you mention you had something you wanted to chat about before we dove into the questions and answers?
Oh yeah, sure. Just a brief update on our favorite robot friend, favorite Hangout-enabled robot friend. Today he made Hackaday, which was a real treat. Of course, Pingbags took down Gus's servers, but they're back up. But it's clearly it's a fun use case. I think people love robots. Clearly, people love Hangout, so it's a match made in heaven.
Yes, Oscar was a lot of fun to show all of you. And in case any of you are wondering, the source code for Oscar was just published to our Office Hours repository, which I'll link to from the show notes in case you were eagerly waiting that source code. It is up there, and you'll be surprised how simple it is. Maybe. Okay, well, without further ado, let's dive into the questions. So I believe, Matt, you had some Hangouts questions that...
Yeah, awesome. So I've been working with Hangouts quite a bit over the last few weeks, and I have a couple of questions here that I'd really like to kind of get through. The first and possibly most important one is one of the problems I'm having with my Hangout is when people choose chat or they choose another app, for example, it really kind of kills my app and I don't know where it goes. Is there any way we can have like a hook or some kind of event that's driven where my app is unloaded on the user side, or perhaps some way to change the UI so that we can notify the user ahead of time that when pressing chat or something like that, they'll be kicked out of the app that's running?
Sure. So there's a few scenarios you talked about. One is about chat, one is about switching apps, and one is actually about turning off an app. And there's three different use cases. When the chat is enabled, it shouldn't have any effect on the functionality of your application. That might just be a bug. I have yet to see that or hear reports of that. So if you're able to reproduce, please let's dive into that.
Just quickly to clarify that while we're on that, it's actually because my app runs in the side pane, like it's one of the side pane apps.
Oh, it's an extension app. Yeah. an extension app, you can only have the chat or an extension type app running at the same time. That's by design, just because of real estate and things like that. I was going to say that for a standard application, we have events related to participants enabling or disabling your app. So on participant enabled, we'll tell you when somebody switches to another app or switches back to the camera. Now, and when you close the app, there's no event for that. But in your particular case, for the extension type app, it's really an all or nothing. There may be an event to listen for that. Silvano, do you know?
No, I don't.
So let's say I didn't do an extension app. Let's say I moved into the main pane. I sort of have a similar problem when people are, for example, clicking on thumbnails and bringing up the main view. Are you saying that in that case, these kind of on participant disabled, would that be fired on the actual client, or would it be fired on everyone else's?
That would be fired on the client. Yeah.
So with that, one thing I was looking at for that is potentially, as they clicked the thumbnail, sending the user an alert or something like that, or some kind of visual view to say, hey, the chat's gone away, something happened. Would I'd be able to do that from participant disabled?
Yeah, let me just pull up the particulars of how you want to do that. So if you go to the documentation, there's the participant enabled event, right?
One thing I noticed about those, though, is they seem to fire for everyone in the Hangout. And in this particular case, I only want to fire the event for the person that actually clicks on the thumbnail.
Interesting. So you have an application running, and it's taking up the full frame, and that user then clicks on the thumbnail to view somebody, and the app gets hidden. So you want that particular user to know that they've disabled the app? Yeah,
exactly. I want them to say, like, hey, you've disabled the app. You're no longer doing something with, whatever my app is doing.
Interesting. There may not be a hook for that right now.
Yeah.
That's something to take back to the team and think of more about.
I think there should be, you have an on-app visible event which might fire. I'm not sure, I haven't used this event, but there's an on-app visible event which might fire. But of course, I think the app should be running in the background, so it should still be able to respond somehow. And then you could just put out like a notification on top, which might work, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there's the on-app visible.
So I guess that clarify the question then is, when I click on the thumbnails, does that actually put the app to the background, or does that remove the app completely?
Correct. The iframe is actually still running.
Okay.
There's really, as far as I know, only one way to really, two ways to stop an app. One is to close the Hangout altogether, and one is to actually go to the app switch at the bottom, and there's a little X that allows the user to close that, and that'll actually delete the iframe, essentially ending the session for that application.
Okay.
If you switch to a different app, it leaves the first app running? It leaves the first iframe in the background?
I believe so.
Okay, that's cool. So what I'll do is I'll try not using the extension app, because I think the extension app has different functionality where it just kind of disappears and I don't know where it goes.
Yeah, the way we think about extension apps is it's sort of an enhancement to the conversation. So if you look at one of Alan's first apps where it had a little text overlay, that sort of adds to the video conversation. It's not really core to the experience. Cameraman is a very similar one, Pro Studio, where the conversation is the center. And if you really want to have a rich application, and still have the main video, we also have the video overlay. So you may want to consider...
My example is actually a bad example because it is a full app that uses the video, that embeds its own video overlay into it, so it has better control over the videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm sure I could probably reproduce my app by just putting a video canvas there. I just thought the extension seemed easier.
From an API point of view, they have the exact same functionality, but there is different behavior on the canvas themselves.
Okay, that answers my question for that one. Should I go ahead and ask my next questions, or should I let some of the other devs ask theirs first?
Go for it.
Okay, so I have a question that's kind of been on the discussions that was just brought up. Is there any way to disable the invite system or disable the invite system when you're joining? A great example of this is someone brought it up on the discussions that the NFL Fantasy League has embedded Hangouts now in their kind of application, but they don't let you invite from other sources. Like they don't let anyone Google Plus kind of invite the usual way. And the reason why I would want to do this is, let's say I'm embedding it in an application of my own. I don't want to have just random Google Plus users join. I want to make sure I know who's joined.
And in particular, make them join with a particular app already running. So
yeah, app ID would be great.
And this is something we've discussed in the past as well.
Yeah, so there's no way to disable the invites functionality of the Hangout. In general, there's sort of the core Hangout experience can only be controlled in some way. So, for example, you can mute the mic, you can lower the volume, but you can't, let's say, prevent somebody from unmuting themselves. And that extends to the invite flow. There is some interesting solutions to getting people into Hangout versus preventing them. I think Aces Poker does this, where they use the Hangout URL and they send that back to their server, and they show the active or based off some algorithm the most interesting Hangout on their site, and they guide people to go to that Hangout. They actually refresh the Hangout itself.
Yeah, so in terms of that, I have no problem getting people into the Hangout. Like, I can grab the Hangout URL and I can append my app ID and get people in. The question I'm concerned is from a user point of view, I really don't want to have the users in there and then trying to invite people in that don't have my app open.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not available today, and it's a great feature request. The first things come to mind besides filing that bug and trying to get that prioritized is somehow enforcing that in the app functionality. So basically, just say, hey, you don't have access to the app because you're not on some magical list that you enforce on your server side.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing at the moment with using like the muting functionality and stuff like that. So I'll mute people who are not who don't have the app open, for example, but they can still see what's going on in the app because I can't really mute everyone like that. They can only mute what people come in to see.
Sure. Yeah, and I was actually suggesting is going one step further, but if they have the app running, to actually disable the functionality of the app entirely.
Well,
saying,
the thing is,
hey, you're not allowed to use this app. Please go away.
Yeah, I mean that's easy. The problem I have is when people join that don't have the app running, because they're still able to see other people's feeds. I can mute them on, like, if someone's running the app, I can mute anyone who doesn't have the app, but I can't prevent them from seeing what's going on in the mainstream.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
So the best thing for that would be to file a bug report.
Yeah, so we have the Google Plus platform bug tracker. Of course, we also take the feedback directly from the office hours and meet with people about it. So
okay,
get those in there. Obviously, it'll help us get it out faster.
And then I guess my final question is completely related to this. This could easily be solved by like some kind of kick functionality or something like that. Is there any plans for that at the moment, or should I be digging through issue reports or something to see if someone else has suggested it?
Yeah, there's definitely been good suggestions around better moderation tools. We launched the Cameraman app as an example of moderation tools, and we're investigating it. We have nothing to announce or anything really concrete to talk about today, but there's definitely been feedback around both for the end users how to have a better Hangout experience for both communication and broadcast, as well as exposing that to developers.
Yeah. Do you guys have a timeline for the 1.2 release? I know that 1.1's been around since I've started working on it. Do you know when anything like new will be up?
We don't have a regular release cycle, so it's really hard to say. I think we've walked through how the release cycle happens, which makes it a little bit more complicated because there's a plugin, the Google Plus plugin. Let's say we decide on a new functionality and we want to introduce it. So the plugin team has to go in, decide the best way to make it optimal and what features to enable and how the API surface should look. And that gets built, deployed. At that point, once it's in staging or whatever, the Hangout Apps platform team then goes and starts working with it and creates the JavaScript surface. So that tends to increase the amount of time it takes to release, so things can be very flexible. But in general, we're going to try to get some low-hanging fruit out pretty soon. But nothing.
Awesome. That answers all of my questions. Thank you. Thank you guys again for your time.
Sorry, I don't know if you're talking about, but can you say what you're working on, or is it still on the DL?
It's still on the DL, but hopefully it will be done soon.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Thanks for the questions.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the great question. So does anyone else in the Hangout have anything they'd like to ask Jonathan, Silvano, or myself?
This isn't exactly a Hangout API question, but I'm just curious if you guys know anything about the relation of the Hangout technology and WebRTC.
So WebRTC and Hangouts? Yeah, so Google and a bunch of other companies have been pushing the WebRTC standard. It's sort of started with us, and a few of our technology required to be open sourced. And it's definitely part of the open web platform, and we're moving towards making that sort of a available standard for developers. Definitely the Hangouts team has been looking into it and talking to the WebRTC team. Obviously, it's an in-Google project. There's some challenges there. The spec doesn't have proper support for multi-way video. It doesn't have the data channel thing really baked in. There's a proposal for that. But that's the future of online web communication, and we hope to align ourselves sometime in the future.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And it's fun. I play with Get User Media all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw the xylophone demo.
Yeah, that's very, very cool.
For those who are watching and haven't seen it, it's a great. I think it's on HTML5 Rocks or one of the other HTML sites where it's using Get User Media and some sort of hand tracking, and you can play a xylophone on the top of the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, if you are interested in the WebRTC, I think last week there was an office hours from the Chrome developer relation team from London, so you should be able to find it in the GDL, in Google Developers Live.
Excellent.
Yep. It was a great talk with Sam Dutton and I think some of the product managers or the tech leads.
Yeah, I think Pete Lapage as well was there, and yeah.
This is more of a best practices type question. Are there any best suggested ways for dealing with maintaining a? One of the things I tend to find a lot, and I'm sure a lot of other developers do as well, is they're maintaining a list of people who are in a queue, for example, for a game or whatever, and that queue is stored in the shared state. Occasionally, a person will leave, either quit the app or leave a Hangout or whatever. The person needs to be removed from the shared state. Is there any best practice about figuring out who does that removal? Or should every client try to remove it at the same time and we get a cascade of people all submitting the same change to the shared state?
I remember when we first launched, there was a dev, I believe his name was Matt Center, or still is Matt Center, and he built a very simple JavaScript client for client-side state machines that integrated with the shared state. And I think the short answer there is the best practice is to figure out. So, for example, if you have a leader in a game, then just have all the work done by the leader. And the leader could simply be the first person to join the Hangout. You just sign that as a leader, and he does all, that client does all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, then you only have the problem if the current leader leaves the Hangout, then you have to decide to the next one who's that's the problematic part then.
You already have a queue.
In this situation, you've got a queue, so it's the first person in the queue does all the work, and if the first person's not the one who's there, then the second person does all the work. So in this case, it's established, but it sounds like for the general case of best practices, having one person submit deltas instead of having everybody submit a delta, the same delta, is the better solution.
One of the functionalities I think we added in 1.0, or just one of the pieces of data, we had participant order ID, order. I forgot the exact. It's the order that person joins the Hangout, and so that's a lightweight way of, you can use that for assigning. Display index, that's what it is. So I've used it
Ahead of me, and then ask him, why is the light going?
Sounds good.
It's really late here, so all the lights keep turning off.
That happens, that whole environmentalism thing. So great, so good to know. I'm probably going to pull some questions in from the stream once we come back. once we wrap up that question that's still active. I don't think we quite finished it. Sorry?
Some good ideas.
We are live again, everyone. So, hey, everyone on the stream. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry we lost the stream for a moment. And where were we on that question? Would you like to repeat the question?
The question was, I think, under what circumstances would display index be null?
Yes. Well, we started with best practices for managing a queue, and basically, if you have one operation that only one person has to do, or one, we only need to do once, how do you manage sending to everybody? And one suggestion that I gave was using the display index, because that is a simple, lightweight way to pick, who's the leader, and display 0, index equals 0 could be the person who always acts. So display index, in the documentation, we state that display index can be null. That may be related to the cameraman, and I think we just have to figure out on our own, do a little experimentation, and we can update that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. So I have one question from the YouTube comments. Plaid Gaming is wondering how they can improve their experience with streaming game feeds, I guess, into a Hangout. So specifically, Plaid Gaming asks, is there a way to make the content that they're streaming to the Hangout full screen?
So, can you make your streaming content full screen? So in general, the Hangouts can be, in certain operating systems, maximized to the full frame of the operating system, but the core content cannot be broken out. So as you scale that to full screen, the Hangout information at the top and the volume controls, they all go to the top of the screen, and the film strip at the bottom goes to the bottom of the screen. And the core camera, or the core frame, gets bigger, but that can never be the full screen. That's a good use case for streaming, but it's less interesting when you're talking about Hangout and conversation. But I understand where you're coming from, but unfortunately, you can't do that today.
So great idea. So keep those ideas coming. So that's it for our questions from the stream right now. So does anyone else in the Hangout have a question they'd like to ask?
Yeah, I do actually have a question. Last week we talked about the history API. I sat down and started thinking about this, and a moment in the history API is pretty much the smallest iota of shareable data. And we talked a little bit about correlation or collation of these moments. One thing I'm curious about is if there's likely to be any way for us to take those moments as a set of things that happened and produce a story out of them. Like, will there be some sort of way to share more than one moment as a collection, basically? Because as it sounds right now, if you generate a moment, that moment without context doesn't have that much meaning.
Understood. So you're asking about, from the Google Plus interface, once we have all those moments into your history, what interesting things you'll be able to do with them. Is that right?
Yes, but not only that, if you will have to be able to supply the context from the API. So if correlation and stuff, if you'll be able to use groups of moments together.
So programmatically accessing, so you're asking about programmatically accessing the moments that are part of the history and accessing them via aggregation? This is an interesting question. So we've talked a little bit on our past office hours about about getting feedback from all of you about what we want the Google Plus interface and applications to do with moments once they're in there. And this is a similar kind of question, except it's about programmatic accessing of that. And this is something we haven't really thought a lot about. And one of the things that in the developer preview that we'd like to hear from you. So let me flip this one back at you. assuming you had a read API or a list API of some kind, how would you want to be able to access the moments in interesting ways? How would you want to be able to, as an application developer, how would you want to be able to group moments and filter them and that kind of stuff?
Well, if you were pulling the raw moments from the stream, it's going to be very much like a fire hose. You're going to get a lot of microdata that don't really relate to each other, because you're going to get all the things you +1 and all the things you viewed and all the things you walked past because you have the app on that tags things that you walk past. I don't know. It's going to be too much. So being able to sort of provide some sort of context, say for example, I want not just a search in sort of time, but also, that would be the logical thing, is say, give me the first 100 or give me the ones for the past week or something. But if you want to say, I want all the moments that have to do with when I was in Barcelona, for example, like all the moments that were generated under this particular umbrella context, and then being able to look at those and say, okay, well, I generated a context when I went on holiday, for example, and then all the pictures I took while I was on holiday falls underneath this moments. All the music I listened to become the soundtrack for these moments, so they show up. All the places I checked in at, and the places I reviewed, and the restaurants that I ate at and stuff, and how I can go, well, these are the things, these are sort of the contextual events that happened. And then if I could pull out those as groups of moments, you could do some very interesting things with that, I think.
It's a really cool idea. So that's a
so what I've been thinking in this regard, you have now this, in the API you already have this collection, which at the moment is only set to the vault. So maybe if you just open this collection, so you can create your own collection, so you can make one collection for your vacation, and then you set this as the standard for the time when you're on vacation, and all the moments are written into this special collection, because you have this kind of collection thing planned in some way, it seems.
That's a cool point. I actually like that idea of using collections, although I'm wondering if that would be a sufficiently rich way to describe them, because a collection of moments has many different kind of contexts on different axes. As Emily mentioned, kind of an event, which has geographic location and potentially like time boundaries, like a cluster of moments that occur in a certain period of time. But they're also going to be like all the moments that occurred when I was in my car and all the moments that occurred when I was outside. So there's a lot of different axes that you could use to slice and see this data in interesting ways. So I guess this is a call to all of you developers out there in general. This is the kind of feedback we want. Please share it. Via any channel, via Hangouts like we're doing right now, in the discussion group, in our issue tracker. If there are ways that you'd like to be able to programmatically access and process all those moments in your user's history, please keep that feedback coming to us. And we will sort it out and try and come up with something that will be really interesting to you guys, so you guys can write some really cool applications. So thanks. So let's take a look at the stream right now. We have another comment, also from Plaid Gaming. It's about the same topic of streaming content, sharing content into a Hangout. And Plaid Gaming asks, is there any way to make the latency of the stream less latent, make it faster?
So this latency of the stream, improve the latency of the stream, that's... I wish there was a little more specifics around that, because it is a pretty complex topic. Specifically, if he's doing a screen share, for example, that's limited at the FPS. If you, let's say, have a desktop application trying to screen share and put that into the stream, so that's the functionality of the screen share capabilities. If he is using webcam or a hardware capture card or a software capture card on a faster machine, then the latency of the stream basically is dependent on two things. One, the performance of the machine and the connection. And Hangouts uses a variable codec that changes dynamically compression and a bunch of other things. So that can go up and down. If you're on a fast connection and you have a fast machine, and using, let's say, an external hardware capture card to capture a video game console, then the stream should be very good, especially if you're connecting with local participants, if you are in a good time of the day. In general, we've seen pretty good performance on all those fronts with all those variables under control. Now, if there's something specific you're saying, hey, my particular machine is not performing well, or maybe it's a Linux box and you have an out-of-date plugin, that could be affecting things. Obviously, if you have a slow internet connection, you're not getting the best performance on that codec. But I can't think of anything in particular without specific issues to troubleshoot.
Can you address briefly the differences in latency between submitDelta and sendMessage?
From the API point of view?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So different question altogether about API versus the video stream. So submitDelta. So we have the data channel APIs, which is composed of two types of APIs right now. One is a shared state model, and one is a high-speed UDP-like model. And the shared state, there's a few things going on. One, you're writing a key-value pair to a small shared state, memory somewhere in the cloud, and we guarantee delivery of that key to the cloud. And not only that, we guarantee delivery of events that's been changed to all participants who listen for it. That has, with all those guarantees, there's a bit of latency associated with it, but it's going over the same channel that the video and the sendMessage, the high-speed API is going over. But that's great for in-game persistence. So counting a counter, a level, a type of cursor, anything that's lightweight that you just want to track for that game. It's fast-ish, as the best way to put it. We're seeing around, 300 milliseconds. But it's not real time. It is fast, but it's not real time. That is for persistence. Now we introduced in, I believe, 1.1, the sendMessage API, which is a as fast as we can send it API, and that is a different distribution model. There is no shared state. What it actually does is send a message to every participant but yourself. And we send that out as quickly as possible to all participants. Because it's UDP-like, it is lossy, so there's no guarantee of packets being sent. So if you're sending one packet and you want to make sure that's getting there, sendMessage is probably not the best medium. Most likely what you're going to do is actually use shared state and sendMessage in a lot of cases. So for example, let's say you have a drawing app and you have this nice curve. You're recording the actual curve, maybe as data points in a string, and you keep on pushing it to the shared state. But because of the delay, you want to actually have that smoother. So you'll combine that with the sendMessage to update every participant while it's happening, and then do a little bit of data correction, which is a common technique for video games. So if you drop a packet and then the next frame, you'll update it and smooth that out. And it's usually happening faster than the eye can see. And that is, then you get that smooth curve, persistent and synchronized. That's sort of the high and detailed level description of sendMessage versus shared state.
And you said you were getting about 300 milliseconds with the shared state. What kind of latency are you seeing on the sendMessage?
So they're both going to be variable. I should say that, but we usually see a factor of like 2 to 3. So on good machines and good connections, I've seen on average 300 milliseconds for shared state and 100 milliseconds for sendMessage, and I have seen that fluctuate. So depending on load in the system, the particular repeater node you're connecting to, that may go up or down. But in general, we're getting pretty consistent marks that 100 to 200 on the sendMessage and 300 to 500 really, really bad on shared state. And I really haven't seen very much of that, just some minor reports.
Great. So I see one other comment from the feed on YouTube. William Bryan comments in regards to the previous conversation we just had about being able to read moments in interesting ways programmatically. He describes it as a search problem and describes one potential option as a special collection with a start and end date. So yeah, this is definitely a great option. There are a lot of different ways you could slice or dice these. So if you think of specifically applications you want to write and very specific use cases, those are most helpful to us. So when you're thinking about how you'd like to cluster those moments, definitely please give us use cases. Help us a lot figure out how that fits into the big picture. So thanks. And poking around the streams, I don't see many other comments right now. So are there any other questions from people who've joined us in the Hangout? Doesn't sound like it. So I guess we will call it a day. So thanks everyone who's watching on the stream, and thanks everyone who joined from the Hangout. So until next week, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.